When the Giants drafted Daniel Jones with the sixth overall pick in 2019, many thought, oh, look, the Giants have their quarterback of the future. Fast forward 5 years now, and it seems like that may not be the answer anymore. Whether it's injuries, supporting cast, awful play, Daniel Jones has been criticized a lot by Giants fans and the NFL as a whole. You know, fans question, did the Giants make the right move? Could they have drafted someone else? They could have. The point is, though, despite his 2022 playoff run, many question Jones's future with the Giants. And this is what this episode is all about. This is episode 12 of the 30 10 podcast, a special edition episode, I should say. Me and Brian will dive into the rise and fall of Daniel Jones, if there's any hope of salvaging his career.
With the sixth pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the New York Giants select Daniel Jones, quarterback, Duke.
So they do love a quarterback, and it's the kid from Duke.
Daniel.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, it's Ed Triggs from the New York Giants. How you doing, all right?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Ed?
Are you healthy?
I'm healthy.
All right, well, we're getting ready to turn your card in, so congratulations. I'm here to put you on the phone with Coach Shermer. Sir.
Daniel,
What's up, Coach? How you doing?
how you doing? Good?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great.
We're thrilled. We're getting ready to put your card in. You're going to be a New York football Giant.
Well, thank you so much, Coach. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Brian, that was the moment that changed Giants history for, well, pretty much these past 5 years. And at the moment, Brian, let's say the move was, a good one that we could get behind. But fast forward to 5 years from now, there's a lot of question marks surrounding Daniel Jones. So first off, happy Monday to you. I'm glad you're here with me. And how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. We're excited to talk about Daniel Jones. He's been, a guy I originally I hated the pick and then loved him, and then it's been a roller coaster with Daniel Jones. So finally ready to break down everything.
Definitely a roller coaster of emotions per se when it comes to Mr. Jones. So we'll dive into all of the the year by year breakdown of him and talk about who he's been working with the past 3 years with the Giants and if there's any hope of saving him. And we'll talk about all of that right now. So, Daniel Stephen Jones. Who is this guy? We'll start off with the basics. So, Jones was born on May 27th, 1997.
He attended birthday. His birthday's in a week.
Oh, wait. Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Well, that's ironic. We could have done this episode next week.
I was going to say, no, that seems a little mean.
That's true. But I just realized that just now. Good call. Jones attended Charlotte Latin School in Charlotte, North Carolina. He was a two-star recruit in the class of 2015. He had interest from just two schools, Duke and Princeton. Ended up committing, obviously, to the Blue Devils. And he played under Coach David Cutcliffe, who was the coach for Duke actually from 2008 to 2021 before he parted ways with the university. Jones redshirted his first year. He started in 12 games his sophomore year, leading Duke to a 4-8 record. Threw 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Also ran for 7 touchdowns of his own for 486 yards. First off, Brian, before we dive into the rest of his college career, did you look into his college career as well? And any thoughts on his first year playing?
Yeah, so my big thought of his first year was he was kind of rushed into the situation because he had to go in after Thomas Sirk suffered a season-ending injury. So he was never prepared to be the starter, and I don't think the plan was for him to start at all that season. So the fact he's able to throw 16 touchdowns and almost 3,000 yards while basically being rushed into that starter position is somewhat impressive.
100%. Obviously, for any quarterback, when you rush into a situation, you play as well as Jones did. That second year after redshirting his first year, statistically, it's pretty good. 2,800 yards. Yes, not eye-popping, but when you're considering the fact that you're being thrown into the fire, not too bad. 2017 was his first, kind of the first year where okay, he has a year under the system with Duke, so on and so forth. Things kind of got worse. I mean, to start
He
the
took a step
season,
back.
a little bit, yeah. The Blue Devils had 4 straight wins over NC Central, Northwestern, Baylor, and the rival North Carolina Tar Heels. But after that, 6 straight losses followed for the Blue Devils. The offensive line was solid for Jones. I mean, they were just one of 6 teams in the ACC with over 2,200 yards rushing and 2,700 yards passing. But they still went 7-6 at the end of the day. And statistically, he was a bit worse. He threw for 2,691 yards, 14 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. So a bit concerning there. Also ran for 7 touchdowns too, but the passing numbers, Brian, not too good there. What and I guess my question for that one is, what happened in 2017 that kind of saw his performance decline?
You could say that there's more film out on him. It's scary to be, thrown into a, new situation, but there's also when you're the brand new quarterback, especially a guy who redshirted, all you have on this guy is what he did in high school. So you really don't know what this guy's going to be. Now that they've had like a year, they can sit back, dissect him. Like, okay, this is what he does good. This is what he does bad. We can expose those weaknesses, and that is where the step back came from. It's the same reason why every kind of rookie goes through a sophomore slump. He was a junior when he did it, but it's kind of that sort of sophomore slump. But okay, teams are kind of figuring it out. Let's see how he responds to it.
100%. Despite the fact that he was sacked the 4th fewest times per game, at the end of the day, statistically, like you just mentioned, with the whole film on him and everything like that, he was not the best like he was in 2016. Now in 2018, it was somewhat better. Jones played in 11 games that year, going 6-5. That included a win in the Independence Bowl. 56-27 was the final score against Temple University. Jones went, wow, he was outstanding, by the way. 30 of 41, 423 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Also added a rushing touchdown as well. Overall, on the season, he had 22 passing touchdowns, 9 interceptions, while throwing for 2,674 yards. So similar stats to 2017, but he kept the turnovers down, but increased the touchdown total in the process. By a good margin too. Also had 3 rushing touchdowns. What do you think of his 2018 statistics?
I think his 2018 statistics show that he has a future in the league. But also have to remember, ACC, beat Temple. These aren't the best schools he's going against. So yeah, these numbers definitely did take an uptick, and sure, there is potential there, but we also have to look at the level of competition he's playing at. And then if that leads us to the NFL draft, which is where this whole thing kind of goes haywire. So Daniel Jones plays in the 2019 Senior Bowl, wins MVP, 8 of 11, 115 yards, and a touchdown. That got scouts noticing him. Daniel Jones always was kind of noticed, but he was also kind of seen as a day 3, day 2 pick. This is what got him high up on draft boards. He had a pro comparison of Ryan Tannehill. He had strengths, did more with less skilled positions at Duke, had quick work through progressions. Which is what I love the most about Daniel Jones, is he feathered throws into target. Now, this is something we saw when Daniel Jones' first preseason game against the Jets. He had a throw. I forgot who he was throwing to, but he put it in the perfect spot where the defender couldn't get him and the receiver could stay in balance. That moment, I'm like, okay, this kid might be something. There might be something here. I think, of course, overall, he's a great athlete. He was a dual threat coming out of high school. He was still that dual threat in college. You mentioned 7 touchdowns, 2 years. I forgot what he did his senior year, but he was a rushing threat. We saw that in the NFL. That is where he was really good. But on the flip side, passes were batted down a lot at the line, average release to a slow windup, attempted throws into impossible windows, which comes from that confidence of, putting the ball in the perfect spot. He was a little bit more, I don't want to say he was a gunslinger with it, but he was more willing to try to throw things. And when you try to put it in such tight windows, it's a recipe for interceptions and disasters. And he got scared when pressure's in his face. Instead of just holding the ball or throwing the ball out of bounds, he put it in the middle of the field or put it where the defender is. Again, another recipe for just disaster.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I will ask you, moving on from that scouting report. and I'll give my take in just a bit. But in your opinion, Brian, why did the Giants draft Daniel Jones?
Well, there's three reasons why the Giants drafted Daniel Jones. Number one is David Gettleman even said this. He fell in love with Jones at the Senior Bowl. That Senior Bowl performance, those three drives, never forget, three drives. Daniel Jones was a quarterback for three drives. Dave Gettleman watched those three drives and goes, that's the future quarterback of the New York Giants. The second reason was his head coach at Duke. The same head coach at Duke, I believe he was Eli's offensive coordinator at Ole Miss. So he's worked with Eli Manning and had such a strong connection with Eli that Gettleman thought that he could bring him in here and it'd be a similar situation. And then finally was his mentality. Daniel Jones never was a guy, he never was a guy who's going to make headlines. He wasn't going to say the wrong thing. He was the kind of guy, keep his head down, do what he has to do, go to the locker room. He puts on a good face at the, in the media, at the press conferences, and moves on. That's the type of quarterback the Maras and Gettleman like. They just like that guy. And yes, that type of mentality works in New York. We saw it with Eli for 15 years. That works. So the Giants kind of wanted to find the next Eli Manning and saw Eli Manning's mentality in Daniel Jones.
I gotcha. Yeah, I'm gonna tie in the question to the answer to that question along with what I got from the scouting report, and it's kind of basically what you said. But it's more in the fact that when the Giants drafted Jones, a lot of people thought like it wasn't the quarterback that they would have taken if they were the GM. I mean, he was the sixth best quarterback in the draft apparently, and he was the 59th ranked player overall in the draft as well. But the Giants said, look, we had to get our guy to take over for Eli, and that ended up being Eli's last year in 2019. And we can't really criticize them for doing so when they drafted Jones if they felt like he was that guy.
No.
So, at the moment, a lot of people, including and you and me, when Jones was drafted, it was like, okay, well, maybe he's not the Dwayne Haskins, or obviously he's not Kyler Murray, but at the same time, he was a first-round talent. So that was when people were like, okay, we can sort of get behind the drafting of Jones. And, Jones is 6'5", so he has great size for a quarterback. He was mobile coming out of Duke, so that was good to see because the Giants, before Jones, have always had pocket passers. Eli Manning, Kerry Collins, Burt Warner. Their arm talent was but the same could have been said for Eli.
Yeah.
So like you mentioned with the whole, falling in love with Jones thing, he had similar traits to Eli, where not just the GM but the ownership was like, okay, this is something we could work with, and that's why they drafted him. I will ask you this though, along to continue on with this topic of the whole draft, the drafting of Jones. The Giants were scared that he would have been taken before 17th overall.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's the case?
Absolutely not. There's no way Jones. I've heard rumors of Washington taking him. I don't really think there were any team that loved Daniel Jones the way the Giants did. I think Dwayne Haskins was the more sexy pick, if you would. I think a team would definitely have gone Haskins before Jones, and Jones definitely would have been there at 17.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing because it's just like Haskins went 2 picks before 17. Thankfully, the Giants were able to get Dexter Lawrence with the 17th overall pick. So that it's a blessing in disguise, no matter how you put it.
Yeah.
But it's to the point where if you look at the whole quarterback class after Kyler Murray, no one was really known to be like the elite in the elite class outside of Kyler. And I'm not saying Kyler's elite.
But the best quarterback outside of Kyler is Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, like Drew Lock, he's our backup.
Ironically,
Haskins was unfortunately taken from us way too early, so we'll never know what he could have been. But what we did see was nothing inspiring. Maybe it would have worked out in Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, we'll never know. But there's no one in this draft. I'm looking at the NFL. Will Grier is the 5th best prospect. Where is Will Grier?
Where's Will Grier?
I don't think Will Grier is still. I think Will Grier might be a coach at West Virginia right now.
Yeah, I say last I heard of him, he was playing for the Panthers, but
He's signed with the Eagles right now.
oh,
He's
well,
an
there you
Eagle.
go.
I don't know what he's. Yeah, 1-year contract with the Eagles.
It's probably like the backup to the backup.
Exactly. He's on practice squads for a few years. Bengals practice squad in 2023. The
Okay.
Patriots had him for a little bit in 2023, then cut him. The Chargers signed him. Now the Eagles got him. Yeah, no, nothing great.
Yeah, so the quarterback class that year it was a bit rough, but at the same time, I'm not saying Dwayne Haskins would have had success with the Giants, but there would have been less criticism, and there was more hope for him considering his resume. About Haskins, real quick, he was a gifted pocket passer, better arm strength than Jones, great touch in his throws. The experience was his only concern because he only had that 1 full year.
Yeah, experience and maturity level were his only concerns.
Especially the mature. That's a great point. You bring up the maturity level, yes. Which I want to get to that in just a second. So size for Haskins, he was 6'3", so he's 2 inches shorter than Jones, but great arm strength. Scrambling wise, not so much compared to Jones, but he can create plays with his legs if he has to. He did, erupt as a redshirt sophomore. 50 touchdowns to 8 interceptions over 4,800 yards. Passing on 70% completion percentage. Led the Ohio State Buckeyes to a 13-1 record, including the one against the Washington Huskies in the Rose Bowl, where he had 3 touchdowns and 251 yards. And if you compare Jones and Haskins, this is where the criticism is a big factor because, Haskins played in the Big Ten. He played Michigan. He played Michigan State. He played the great, good, tough teams. Whereas Jones, his best opponent was Clemson. Like, that's the only team that kind of posed a challenge. And that's a big concern because scouts look at how you perform against, good teams. And Haskins showed that, hey, he's a winner. Jones, when you can't even beat Clemson, why should we be drafted higher? But that's the thing, because we can talk about that all we want, but the main thing that separated Jones from Haskins was leadership qualities, because there were questions with Haskins when it came to that, and like you brought this up, maturity. Haskins wasn't really known to be mentally ready. Yes, he made some mistakes when he was drafted by the Commanders, but at the same time, the culture in Washington was never really healthy anyways. Yeah. So that kind of played a role in it. And what kind of hurts the most is that Haskins really wanted to be a Giant. He did. Because he grew up a Giants fan. It would have been a dream come true for him to come play and have his family watch him play for the franchise. It is the Giants. This is what he said at the scouting combine when he was interviewed back then. He had a meeting with the Giants at that same time, and he was asked, "Hey, how do you feel about playing behind Eli Manning for a year?" He didn't mind. He was comfortable. He wanted to learn behind Eli, and when it came to just why he wanted to play for the Giants, it was just not just he was a fan, but he just felt like he was the right fit for the franchise. And unfortunately, the Giants didn't get him, and we still will never really know the true reason why. But at the same time, you got to admit that things could have been different. Because
things definitely would have been different with Haskins. And I have a buddy who's a big Commanders fan, and then when you text me on Saturday, I asked him, like, okay, what are your opinions on Haskins? He goes, definitely the culture was not there. And I'm like, okay, hypothetically, what if the Giants draft him? And he goes, you guys would definitely be better off, but I don't think he would have been the answer long term. I thought of this. It kind of I think it'd have been similar to what Tua is in Miami, where like Tua is, yes, he's probably the long-term option, but there are still a lot of question marks surrounding him of can he be the quarterback of the future with the Giants. I think we would have had that with Haskins. Was he shows us signs, but like there's also probably a better option out there. So are we really going to try to develop Haskins, or are we just going to move on for someone else?
And Haskins, he was he impressed at the combine. He really
Yeah.
did. And why the Giants decided to not go with him after having a great meeting with him and seeing how he performed, we won't know.
Yeah, no.
And at the end of the day, they
But we
drafted
also don't know
Jones.
how Haskins would have responded to New York media because, he was killed for, taking selfies and missing the final play of his first career win. New York City would have crucified him for that one. Breaking COVID protocols twice. Again, Joe Judge would have been the head coach. You really think Joe Judge would have taken an opportunity to discipline the starting quarterback and really show the guys that he's the tough guy? It's
True.
just like, I don't, we can't say for sure that Haskins would have been the guy here, but like there's also signs that he could have been. It's kind of hard with Haskins, and we'll just never know. Like we only know what he did in Washington. We'll never know what happens with the Steelers with a overall better team culture.
And consider the environment because Washington has never been one of those franchises known to be a healthy environment to be in. Obviously because of the whole Dan Snyder thing. So I think I come from the mindset of that if he came to the Giants would have kind of treated him and showed them the right way to act. And, help them mature better. That's just my thought. But
that's a fair thought. I'm just more worried about like Shermer would have been fired regardless. How he responded to, Joe Judge and Jason Garrett. The Giants were an overall better culture, but they were in such a weird spot at that time that who really could succeed with that? And we'll get to Jason Garrett in a minute. I've done a lot of research on Jason Garrett, and I think I figured out Daniel Jones' problems.
All right, perfect. And we'll dive right into that in like a bit.
Keep going. Yeah.
I do want to talk about the guys drafted after Jones because if you think about it, the Giants they really didn't have to get Jones. Looking back at it, they really didn't have to because if you think about it, but the Giants had Eli Manning, they could have rolled him again. He played 16 games a year before, over 4,200 yards passing, 21 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Yeah, it's a bit high, but he did throw 21 touchdowns. The Giants went 6-10 the year before, and the only issue was that they just needed to finish games. I mean, 7 of the 10 losses for the Giants were by one score. They lost to Indy 20-27 in Week 16. They lost 36-35 against Dallas in Week 17. And Eli played pretty well in both of those games, throwing for over 300 yards in both of those games. It was just, either it was the defense having to close the games out or just the offense just falling a little bit short. It was just, that's how it was. And the roster wasn't that bad with Eli. You had Saquon. You had Odell Beckham Jr. You had Sterling Shepard. You had Evan Ingram. All 4 of those guys, they were playing pretty well. So it was like, okay, I understand the fact that Eli's getting older, but if you didn't feel comfortable getting Jones, you didn't have to. Like, you could have rolled with Eli one more year. And who was drafted next year? Justin Herbert. The Giants really loved Justin Herbert. And if the Giants did play bad in 2019, which they ended up doing, and we'll get to 2019 in just a bit, they could have got Justin Herbert. They could have drafted him.
Yeah.
So, and the players drafted after Jones, they would have been more impactful from the aspect.
There's 2 Pro Bowlers taken right after Jones. It's Josh Allen and TJ Hawkinson.
Exactly. And then even the guys after those 2, Christian Wilkins, Brian Burns, who is now a Giant, thank God, right? So, also, what's his name? Chris Lindstrom from Boston College. He went to the Falcons, the guard. He would have been a mainstay at left guard. But at the end of the day, Giants drafted Jones. We can't complain. Back then, we were very excited to have a new quarterback to watch play because there were moments where I was like, okay, it's time to move on from Eli. As much as it hurt to say that, it was time for a new regime once Jones was drafted. And this is where we get to the year-by-year breakdown, starting with his rookie season, because we thought Jones was going to sit behind Eli the whole season. That changed immediately. So, quickly, the Giants finished 4-12 in 2019. Spoiler alert. They were 18th in scoring, but second worst in points allowed. So that was pretty bad. Head coach was Pat Shurmur, as we saw in the introductory video. Offensive coordinator was Mike Shula, which was like, whoa, because I
Yeah, I
completely
forgot he was
forgot.
the OC. When you told me Mike Shula was our OC, I'm like, oh my god, I forgot about that one.
I know. I was like, I thought it was Jason Garrett, but it was Mike Shula that year. I guess Garrett was the next year. I was like, okay.
He was in Dallas, I think. I think it was Garrett's last year in Dallas was that year. Then he was fired, and the Giants were like, we like this guy.
Like this guy, like, oh, what? We're gonna draft damaged goods, I guess, but whatever. Defensive coordinator for the Giants was James Betcher. Not like it matters, but it's worth pointing out. The Giants went the West Coast offense. Now, for those of you who don't know, the West Coast offense has an emphasis on passing compared to running. It involved short horizontal passing routes instead of running the football to stretch defenses out, which opens up long runs and long passes down the field. In terms of running the football, it starts with like the power and the ISO runs up the middle. But the power runs, those are necessary to set up passing game, which include short intermediate throws. The offensive core for the Giants consisted of the following: Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Sterling Shepard, the rookie Darius Slayton, Golden Tate, Evan Ingram, and an offensive line, which will be a big position worth noting throughout the rest of the episode. Had Nate Solder, Will Hernandez, John Jalapio, Kevin Zietler, and Mike Remmers as the starting offensive line. Brian, before I give my points, what were your takeaways from Jones's rookie season, which he didn't start until the week 3 against Tampa Bay, where he made his first start in Tampa and led the Giants to a win that week.
So, Jones starting week 3 was Pat Shurmur feeling, getting a little hot. He needed something to show ownership that, hey, I can still be the head coach. Let me put in the rookie that we drafted and we think is going to be the future. I can lead him. And I really like Daniel Jones his rookie year, all right? I loved that game in Tampa where he, it's not a well-known thing, but when the Giants were down in that game, Daniel Jones went to the huddle and said, guys, we're winning this effing game, and called the play. And I forgot which player it was, but players were taken aback by that. Like, oh, okay, like Eli never said stuff like that. Let's rally, let's win for this guy. So he had that leadership ability in him right there. And he threw for 3,000 yards. He threw over 20 touchdowns. Turnovers were definitely a problem, but every rookie quarterback has turnover issues. Peyton Manning has the record for most interceptions thrown in a rookie season, and he's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So my thought was, if Daniel Jones can limit the turnovers, he could be the quarterback for the next 10 years.
I love that. The confidence we saw from him, early in his career was nice to see, especially the win against Tampa. That was one of the more inspiring wins I've seen from Jones. And, after Tampa, he did beat the Commanders, because who doesn't? And he played pretty well in that game.
And also Dwayne Haskins start. Yeah, the Dwayne Haskins first start.
And that's when people were like, okay. That's when the Giants were thinking, like, okay, they did make the right decision choosing Jones over Haskins.
He threw 3 picks that game.
That was
I was actually at that game.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you were lucky to see that one. It was 24-3.
Yep, 24-3. It was a great game. It was a great game to be at.
I mean, even both quarterbacks even played well. I mean, Jones had 1 touchdown, but he had 2 interceptions, so that was kind of like the downside or the negative from his play. But the Giants still won that game, so that's what mattered. But after that Washington game, things got really, really ugly. The Giants lost 8 straight games when he was starting, and he missed out in weeks 14 and 15 because of an injury. Actually, had an ankle sprain that he suffered against the Packers, so he was out against the Eagles and the Dolphins. That's when Eli came back in and played well, actually, in those 2 games, including that Miami game, which was kind of the last.
It was his send-off.
Yeah,
I remember Eli running off the field waving goodbye, and his family was in the tunnel waiting for him. Like, that was a big goodbye Eli game.
And even the Giants still had one more home game too against the Eagles in week 17, but that was Eli's like final start because Jones was ready to go in week 16, which he threw 5 touchdowns against the Commanders, which was really good in the 41-35 overtime win, and then they would lose in week 17 to the Eagles with 34-17. Jones throwing 1 touchdown and 1 interception, but it did throw for 301 yards. I do want to mention a game that is kind of a game that was very He played really well, but it's not mentioned as much. And that was the Lions game. He went 28 of 41, 4 touchdowns, 322 yards. They did lose 31-26, but he played pretty well against Detroit. So, overall, that rookie season, it gave Giants fans hope because it was just okay. He played well. Statistically, he was great. 24 touchdowns, 12 receptions, over 3,027 yards passing. Consider the injuries he suffered. I was like, okay, plus his rushing numbers. This guy, he can create plays. Maybe the Giants made the right decision after all. Offensively, overall, I mean, they averaged 338 yards per game, which is good for 23rd best in the league. They were kind of average offensively in passing and rushing. And the offensive line, most importantly, they were the 17th ranked overall offensive line. So not too bad. So that, obviously when you see these statistics, you think things could get better. It did not. 2020 was the COVID year. Pat Sherman was fired after the Giants went 4-12. In came Mr. Joe Judge, and he brought basically a whole new staff with them. The offensive coordinator was Jason Garrett. Defensive coordinator was Patrick Graham, who I loved, and the tight end coach. I love Patrick Graham. I do. He was great for us until he went to the Raiders and we got Martindale. Things got better. The tight ends coach was Freddie Kitchens. Giants drafted guys like Andrew Thomas, Xavier McKinney, and Matt Pert. Those are a few notable names. The Giants went 6-10 that year, so good for the NFC. Good for second place in the NFC East. They could have made the playoffs if the Eagles beat the Commanders. If they tried, assholes.
There it is. If they tried,
I will never forgive him for that. We could have made the dang playoffs, but anyways, the Giants ran an offensive scheme known as the Air Coryell offense. This scheme is known to be a high-flying one, very pass-happy, especially deep plays down the field. Well, that's ironic. This offense is based on one-back sets with 2 tight ends, which involves shifts and motion filled. This is carried over from the Patriots when Bill Belichick ran this offense. So Joe Judge with Belichick. Joe Judge worked under Belichick as the special teams coordinator, came to the Giants as the head coach, brought that offense with him. And I guess the Giants believed in Jason Garrett. And before we even get to Jones, or we'll tie in Jones with Garrett, obviously. But I think we'll let Brian do the honors because you found something.
Yeah, I did. So you mentioned the Air Coryell offense, and none of the position players the Giants have filled that in any way possible. So the offense involves freak athletes, trying to create space. The Giants didn't have those freak athletes. The Giants were built for the West Coast offense, small, short passes to get the ball downfield. The biggest thing I saw was that it involves quarterbacks taking 5 or 7 steps back and letting a play develop. 2 things on that. 1, the Giants did not have an offensive line to do that at all. 2, Daniel Jones struggles the longer he has the football. If you go back to his rookie season, when he had the ball for 2.5 seconds and under, his completion percentage was 67%, 13 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. When he held the ball longer than 2.5 seconds, his completion rate dropped to 55%, through 11 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. So Daniel Jones was better when he was able to throw the ball quicker. He's not a quarterback that can sit and let plays develop, which is what Jason Garrett's offense revolved around. Like shoving a square peg in a round hole. It's not going to work. None of these pieces fit this offensive scheme. And I know Garrett was hired because he was a head coach. The Giants wanted to give Joe Judge someone with experience on the staff. You have to look at it as what pieces do I have on this roster and who am I going to bring in that can put these pieces to the best of their ability. Garrett was not that guy.
100%. And you bring up a great point about the offensive core. Yeah, so there was Daniel Jones, the starter, obviously, but Wayne Gallman, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Evan Ingram, Caden Smith was the other tight end. Because this offense, they needed 2 tight ends, and Caden Smith served as that tight end too. The offensive line, I mean, talk about rookies. Andrew Thomas first year, Shane Lemieux first year, Nick Gates, Kevin Zeitler, and then Cameron Fleming. You know, this season was kind of due from the start because this offense was just not built for this team. And it doesn't help that you lost Saquon Barkley early in week 2 against Chicago with that torn ACL. By the way, Evan Ingram was a Pro Bowler that year, which was weird.
That's got to be one of those things where every team needs a representative, and there was no one else in the Giants even good enough. So it's like, all right, I guess we got to put Evan Ingram in there.
Yeah, Ingram had 63 catches, 654 yards, and just 1 score. And then he had
but you can count the amount of interceptions that he caused because he couldn't catch a damn football, or the game he blew in Philly because he couldn't catch that ball. If he catches that ball, the Giants are in the playoffs.
Fair.
I'll never forgive Evan Ingram for that one. That was the worst. It was in his hands. He came out of college as a receiving tight end. They literally said on the NFL draft, the Giants basically have a wide receiver at tight end. He couldn't catch the ball.
Then he goes to Jacksonville and plays pretty well over there too. So it's just like, thanks, buddy. Can do that over here. The Giants started with 5 straight losses to start 2020, including a 36-9 thrashing at home in SF in week 3. The Giants had not even scored more than 20 points at all until week 5 against Dallas, and they still lost that game 37-34. The first win of the season, you guessed it, came against the Commanders, 20-9 win in week 6. The Giants went on a 4-game winning streak from weeks 9 to 13, but Jones missed that Seattle game in week 13. That was the infamous Colt McCoy and Wayne Gallman game. Oh, man, I tell you. Gallman was a star in that game. The 135 yards rushing, holy crap, he was great. The Giants did lose their final 3 of the last 4 games to finish 6-10. But obviously the focus is on Jones. So what happened? I'll start statistically. Jones only had 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 423 yards rushing to add on to that. And he was sacked 45 times. His playmakers were injured consistently. Saquon, obviously, he was a big loss. The offensive line was second worst in the NFL that year, according to Pro Football Focus. Consider the fact that it was Andrew Thomas's rookie year. He looked like a buzz coming out of the gate. Shane Lemieux with Hernandez allowing a pressure rate of 8%, according to Pro Football Focus. And then you have Cam Fleming. And when you have Cam Fleming at right tackle, that kind of says enough in itself. But you mentioned Jason Garrett's scheme, and I don't want to have you repeat what you said. But when I was looking at it, his scheme is a bit challenging for quarterbacks, right?
Definitely, especially a quarterback like Jones.
Exactly, and it's because of the fact that these receivers, they have to run a lot of what they call isolation routes. And what does that mean exactly? So the quarterback has to first read the coverage and then read which receiver is winning his route. And that was kind of a challenge, right? Because you mentioned the Giants didn't have great fits at wide receiver. The receiving core wasn't good enough to create a lot of that separation from their defenders. So that kind of made it hard for Jones to throw into those big windows per se. Mm-hmm. And coming out of college, Jones was that RPO quarterback, which because he ran an RPO heavy offense at Duke. And what is an RPO offense known for? I should say run pass option offense known for? Simple reads. Jones is smart and dedicated, but when he's asked to handle a lot of information, doesn't do too well, which correlates with the whole 5 to 7 steps. When he's holding the ball for too long, where he has to think, that's where he doesn't succeed, like you talked about.
Mm-hmm. And the line didn't give him any time to think.
Oh,
you get the ball, step back 5, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, there's 2 defenders in my face.
Yeah, I mean, he was sacked 45 times. Like that just shows he had no time to process everything and get the ball to his guy. And also, question: why did we have Evan Ingram run like curl routes and crap? Like, why didn't we send him deep?
Jason Garrett's an idiot.
Jesus, man.
He used him as a tight end, and that's just not what Evan Ingram. He was a passing guy. He probably should have been a receiver, just a really big receiver.
Like, does Garrett forget that Ingram is not Jason Witten?
Yes.
Like, send him deep, man. Do you remember the Tampa game in 2019 where Ingram had that crossing route that Jones hit him on and he was gone? Mm-hmm. Dude, send him on those routes. Don't send him on like curl routes and crap, okay? Also, I want to bring up the weapons that Jones had to work with to create separation. Darius Slayton, okay, Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate, C.J. Board, Austin Mack, Dante Pettis, and Damian Ratley. Jeez. Also, the backfield wasn't any help at all either. Because when Saquon went down, you had Wayne Gallman, who he was fair but not as great. Alfred Morris, Devontae Freeman, and Dion Lewis. Like there's no really
Nobody's.
Yeah, like they had their moments, just not with the Giants. Overall, this offense was the second worst in the NFL, averaging 299.6 yards per game. They threw for about 189 yards per game passing wise, which was actually 29th best in the league, better than the Patriots, the Jets, and for some reason the Ravens. Lamar threw for only 183 yards per game that year, which was like, okay. And the Ravens did pretty good.
Yeah, that got Lamar. I think that started the Lamar's a running back jokes.
Yeah.
That performance.
And then he changed everything. He changed himself the next year and just went crazy. But overall, 2020 was a mess, right?
Yeah, a complete mess. Like, the division was bad. We had no right to be even close to a playoff spot, and yet it got us believing that Joe Judge is the next Tom Coughlin, the next, Bill Parcells. Like, oh my. 2020 should just be thrown away and forgot about forever. None of that counted. None of that mattered. The coaching was so horrific, and we just took advantage of the division being bad.
I would have liked to see us in the playoffs. Just because.
I would have loved us in the playoffs. But we also probably should have taken, all right, we're in the playoffs. We really shouldn't be here.
Oh, I remember the Giants winning the Week 17 game against the Cowboys to have a chance at it, but the Eagles at the end of the day decided not to try in that game. I forgot which quarterback they threw out there to play against the Commanders, but
they started with Jalen Hurts, and I believe Nate Sudfeld finished the game.
There you go. That's some messed up stuff, but oh well. All right, 2021. Yeah. This was it, right? This is when it was like, okay, maybe we should move on. The Giants finished 4-13 in 2021. Ouch. Same coaching staff. They drafted guys like Kadarius Toney. Very defensive focus in 2021 because they got Azeez Ojulari, they got Aaron Robinson in the corner. Overall, this was the worst draft in recent memory for the Giants. And they finished with the second worst offense, averaging 15.2 points per game, 24.5 points per game allowed, which was 23rd best, but that's not saying much. The offensive core consisted of Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, new free agent Kenley Galladay, Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, Kyle Rudolph, and an offensive line, including Andrew Thomas, Matt Skura, Billy Price, Will Hernandez, and Nate Solder. Brian, 2021, how did that go for Mr. Daniel Jones?
Not really that great either. If we look at the stats right now, 2,428 yards, 10 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, only played in 11 games because he had that nasty neck injury, which I don't know if you remember this, but there was a rumor floating around on Twitter that the neck injury was a career ender. I forgot who it was, but it was someone. Yeah, I forgot who tweeted it out, but it was someone's like, I have connected with the Maras. This neck injury is really, really bad. Like, this might be it for Jones. And I thought that would be the most fitting way to end Dan Jones' career is we never know if he was a good quarterback or not. Thankfully, he came back next year. But, yeah, no, it's one of those things where the coaching staff was so bad. Kenny Galladay, I don't know if it was Jason Garrett not knowing how to use him in his offense. Is it Kenny Galladay, regressing? But whatever reason, Kenny Galladay was not the superstar receiver that they expected him because when they brought in Galladay, there was this expectation that he was going to be wide receiver number 1 and be sort of the Amari Toomer that Eli Manning had when he was a young quarterback. That tall receiver that Jones could just kind of throw the ball to. He'd jump up and make a play, bring a ball down. He could be like a safety net for Jones. And Galladay was just never that guy. So when that was taken away, back to, it's Shepard, who doesn't fit this offense. It's Slayton, who I think is a security blanket for Jones. But again, not a Jason Garrett type guy. And then when they fired Jason Garrett, they put Freddie Kitchens in as the, coordinator. Did you see what Freddie Kitchens did when he was the head coach in Cleveland with Baker? Pretty bad.
Nothing worth noting.
No, nothing. So I think Daniel Jones was just surrounded by such horrific coaching and forcing him to do things that he's just not good at. He's not good at being that guy to let plays develop. He is a guy that needs to take the ball and just get it out as quickly as possible and let the receivers do the rest of the work.
Yeah, the Giants lost 3 straight to start 2021. They got their first win of the season against the Saints, which was a 27-21 win where Jones went off. 402 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, also adding 21 yards on the ground in that overtime win. But overall, it was a rough season for Jones. He played in just 11 games because of that neck injury. Statistically, said nothing spectacular. Had over 2,400 yards passing, 10 touchdowns, 7 interceptions to go along with his 298 yards rushing on the ground. He had 2 injuries that year, right? You mentioned the neck injury, but he also had that concussion in week 5 against Dallas, where he looked like a wobbling duck.
He played the next week against the Rams. He threw 4 picks. He shouldn't have played that game.
Should not have played at all. And had that neck injury against the Eagles in week 12, out for the rest of the year. And that brought in Mike Glennon and Jake Fromm to finish the rest of the year. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back, because in the last 4 games of the Giants season that year, they finished with 6 points, 10 points, 3 points, and 7 points respectively. A big mess considering the fact that the Giants, especially for Joe Judge, that was not good. They were booed, right, in the last game of the season.
Oh my God, yeah, they were booing the 3rd and 9 play, the 3rd and 9 QB sneak at the 5-yard line. That's when the boo birds came out.
I don't know what we're thinking. I'd just run a play. I mean, at that point, I don't understand why.
They were punting on the play. They realized the drive was over. In that case, just run a running back drive. Don't do a QB sneak. At least show there's some kind of like, because if the Giants do a run play on that drive, everyone forgets it.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that everyone remembers it is because it's a QB sneak, because it just kind of symbolized the entire Giants organization and dysfunction they had at that point, is why we're still talking about to this day. The right play, wrong play call.
Yeah, when I saw that play, I was just like, "Dang, this is how it's gonna be. This is how we're gonna give up, huh?"
I was thankfully working, so I never saw the play live. I just, I was working. I used to work in a fish market. I don't do that anymore.
Okay.
I sold fish, and then all of a sudden, my phone is blowing up my pocket. I'm like, what could possibly be going on in this meaningless Giants, football team game? That it's so important. I pull my phone out, and all my friends were like, "What just happened?"
Yeah. Not the best off of the year for the Giants. And the supporting cast behind Jones, it was it was better than last year, but not too much better. I mean, Kenny Galladay and Sterling Shepard were solid, or they were okay, I should say. Kadarius Toney, before he started punching people and stuff, was.
Tony had so much potential, but just never could keep his head on straight and never could stay on the field healthy-wise.
Had that one game against Dallas where he was pretty good.
Yeah, but then he got thrown out for throwing the punch.
Yeah, nice job, Tony. Yeah. And then surprisingly, Devontae Booker, the backup running back behind Saquon Barkley, had a 47% snap share. Saquon had a 46% snap share. So, I don't know what Joe Judge and Jason Garrett were thinking, or Freddie Kitchens, but for having that.
Jones was playing not Jones. Barkley was playing injured a lot that game because he sprained his ankle in Dallas. Remember?
I don't.
In that Dallas game, he never said he was right the rest of the year.
Oh, okay. Well, that's something I missed.
So that could explain the snap share.
Yeah, I was like, why is it so equal? Because Booker's 47%, Saquon's 46%. In 2021, I was like, why is it so close? But I forgot he
missed games or not. But he definitely said I don't feel like myself.
Explains the statistics. He was terrible. It looked bad statistically. Offensive line was the 3rd worst in the NFL according to Pro Football Focus. Andrew Thomas was the best player. We saw the improvement from Thomas, by the way, had a 78.4 Pro Football Focus grade. Everyone else is bad. No one even had I mean, Billy Price was 62.3. Nate Solder was a 60. Matt Skura was a 50. It was clear Andrew Thomas had a future with the Giants, but after him, there was nothing. And then, as we know, Joe Judge, Dave Gettleman, gone. Patrick Graham, gone. Who else? Jason Garrett obviously was gone. And
I think Graham left the organization. I think Graham had an opportunity to stay and left.
Oh, good riddance.
I mean, yeah, good riddance. Dave Gettleman was given a damn retirement ceremony, which is the most disgrace. They fired Jerry Reese because of something Ben McAdoo did. A guy that brought you a Super Bowl. And Dave Gettleman destroyed the organization, set us back 5 years, and we're sending him off like he's, this great, team builder. Like he built a dynasty here. Like, bro didn't have a winning record while he was here. Why are we celebrating him?
He built a dynasty of losing.
Yeah, a dynasty of losing. Cool. You built a football team that would have been good in 1972.
I'm gonna
running back in the second overall, when you could have had a franchise quarterback or have gotten a load of draft picks. I would have and probably not because he would have screwed up every single pick he used, but could have on paper situation.
I'm gonna fix the offensive line. We're gonna bring back the hog mollies. Nice. Shut up.
Hog mollies.
My ass.
That word's funny. I want to sidetrack quickly on Gettleman. I used to summer internship. I worked in a construction office, and there was a diehard Giants fan there. And he was so upset after a game one time, he called the Giants office. Hey, it's this isn't his real name. Hey, it's Drew. I gotta talk to Dave. Just tell him it's Drew. And he got all the way up to Gettleman's secretary. He was one transfer away to talking to Dave Gettleman. He's like, yeah, it's Drew. Tell Dave, I got to talk to him. And the secretary's like, nice try, man, and hung the phone up.
No.
He was right there.
No. Imagine what he would say. Oh my God.
I asked me, what do you say? He goes, I think I would have been too shocked to say anything.
Yeah, because when you get that far, it's just, if you think about it, it's like.
Yeah, because he goes he's like, there's no way I'm getting anywhere close. I'll probably get hung up the first, and he goes, I'm actually very close right now.
I would have cussed him out. Be like,
No,
you son of a, you said you're gonna fix the offensive line, and you.
He kept saying hog mollies over and over again. I'm like, where are they? Where are these hog mollies you kept promising us? Because they're not here.
Yeah, Cam Fleming ain't no hog molly. Nate Solder ain't no hog molly. Matt Skura ain't no hog molly. There ain't no hog mollies over here. Anyways. All right. So, with the sorry offensive line out the way, with the trash general manager out the door, thank God, the Giants welcomed him, Joe Shane and Brian Dable from the Buffalo Bills, respectively. So welcome in to those gentlemen. Yoo-hoo! They inherited a shitty cap situation, but that's okay because they made the draft work. They got Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal, thank God. Wan'Dale Robinson, Josh Azudu, Daniel Bellinger, and Marcus McKeithen, just to name a few players they got from the draft. And Brian Dable said, you know what? I'm going to bring some competent coaches to the staff. So the offensive coordinator was Mike Kafka. Defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale. And this was honestly the best season for the team across the board in quite a while. They were averaging 21.5 points per game. Big improvement from last year, by the way, allowing 21.8 points per game. Good for 17th, but they made it work. We'll get to the reason why, the fact that they allowed more points than scoring. They were still able to finish with a 9-7-1 record. We'll get to the reason why in just a bit. The offensive scheme was something I've never heard before in terms of the name itself, Brian, and it's called the Erhardt-Perkins offense.
I've heard of it. Belichick ran it.
That's right.
Version of it.
That is right. And you guys are probably wondering, what in the world is this offense? I got you. It's a smash mouth offense that maximizes a team's time of possession. So they use play action passing to set up the run. It's a flexible offense. The concepts can vary throughout the season depending on the opponent. Because it's so simple and flexible, though, it's why the offense can expand in a few dimensions. It's built for multiplicity, and it can allow the offense to explore It does require memorization, though, for players as they're learning the offense, but because every formation, every route concept needs to be memorized, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, this offense worked out pretty well for the Giants in 2022, who had an offensive core with Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Chris Myrick at the fullback position, Marcus Johnson, oh God, Darius Slayton, Daniel Bellinger, Andrew Thomas, Ben Bredesen, John Feliciano, Mark Lewinsky, and Evan Neal. The reason why I didn't say Sterling Shepard instead of Marcus Johnson was because Shepard went down in week 3 with a devastating injury on Monday Night Football, which I will never forget because screw the MetLife turf. Before we get into the reason why Jones Jones played well in 2022, Brian, what do you have for us in terms of Jones's 2022 season?
So yeah, this is definitely Daniel Jones's best season by far. I thought that this was you finally gave Daniel Jones an offensive-minded coach, someone who's actually going to work with Daniel Jones on his strengths. And what is his strengths? Getting the ball out quickly, play action passes. Go back to his rookie season. His quarterback rating on play action passes was 112. On every other play,
Just lost Brian there for just a second, but he'll be right back in just a bit, I think.
But
there you go.
I'm back.
Yep,
All
you're good.
sorry.
You're back. Go ahead, buddy. Yep.
No, I don't want to answer it. We good?
Yep, you're good.
I can't hear you. Hang on. I'm going to leave and come back.
You got it. All right. Technical difficulties here. All good. We'll get to Brian and Jack in just a bit. But yeah, 2022 was a pretty solid season for the Giants as offensively as a whole. Before Brian continues his point, despite I think the big thing that we should take away from the offense for the Giants was that they had a frequent rotation of wide receivers. I mentioned Marcus Johnson as part of that starting lineup is because Johnson started 7 games, and no one's heard of Marcus Johnson, by the way. Let's be honest. The receiver core included, Marcus Johnson, Kadarius Toney, David Sills, Richie James, Kenny Golladay, Isaiah Hodgins was signed off the practice squad midway through the year. Because of that injury to Shepard, you just had a bunch of guys because the Giants didn't have that depth at the receiving position. Brian is back with us now.
Stupid spam calls. Try and tell me like your car has an extended warranty. Well, I don't have a car, so
thanks.
Where does extended warranties coming from?
I was just telling our audience about the rotation of receivers that the Giants had to work through, which made Jones's 2022 run so impressive. But go ahead and continue your point, Brian.
Yeah, so I said play action passes. He had in his rookie year was 112. Every other play, it was 82.9. That is a massive drop off in his time play. So Dable saw that and goes, okay, play action passes work. Let's use play action passes. Let's create this offense and make it simple. Big emphasis on the run game. So defenses are now planning on stopping Saquon. All of a sudden, the defender's off coverage, and there's a receiver open for Jones to hit him quickly for a big game.
Yes, sir. Let's be honest. That week 1 win against the Titans set the standard for the rest of the year. I mean, that was a gutsy win. They beat Carolina the next week, which was great. They did lose to Dallas in week 3, which is so devastating. It was by 7 points, and they were just so close. And Shepard was playing so well that game too, before he went down with that injury. And you could make the argument if the Giants won that game. Well, not that you can make the argument, but if they did win that game, they would have started the season 7-0 because after that Cowboys game, they went on a run. They beat the Bears. They beat the Packers in London. They upset the Ravens at home, at MetLife, I should say. They go to Jacksonville, win by just 1 yard, nonetheless. But they beat Jacksonville to go to 6-1 in the first 7 weeks. They did lose to Seattle that next week, but in the first 10 weeks of the season, the Giants went 7-2, including their bye week. And that's when we were like, okay, we got something, because no one expected the Giants to be this good at that point in the season. And then we saw the negatives, right? The Giants lost to Detroit. They lost to Dallas by 8. They tied with the Commanders. Then they lost to the Eagles to go to 7-5-1. And the whole playoff talk for the Giants, That disappeared. And then they took it up a notch. They beat the Commanders. They lost to the Vikings. Heartbreaking loss to the Vikings on a field goal in Week 16 on Christmas Eve, nonetheless. So that was tough to see. But on New Year's, they beat the Colts 38-10 to seal a playoff spot and nothing to play for in Week 18 against the Eagles. So, nice job by the Giants, who went 8-3-1 in a one-score game. So one-score games were the factor in the 2022 season. Statistically, right, Jones played well. I mean, he was his best season since his rookie year. I mean, he only had 15 passing touchdowns, but he did add 7 rushing touchdowns. He was a threat with his legs throughout the 2022 season. He threw for the most yards in his career at that point with 3,200 yards. He did so with a bunch of, let's be honest, wide receiver 2s and 3s. He kept the turnovers to a low with just 5 interceptions. He was sacked 44 times, but did have a QBR of 62.9, which is a career high as well for the Duke quarterback. What else did you get from him statistically during that 2022 season, Brian? Anything else by any chance?
Just like this, using his legs more. The Giants actually designed runs for him. You actually saw it in that playoff game against Minnesota. Daniel Jones was using his legs and his arm to win that game. So it was just Brian Daboll becoming creative with Jones and getting him like a simple, all right, what's he do well? Good at short passes, good at play action, good at running the ball. We'll use that and create a simplified offense for him that he'll, can easily learn and then, do well with.
Yep. I mean, statistically, there are games during that season where Jones, he was great. I mean, he had that game against Jacksonville, had 202 yards passing, 1 pass touchdown, but he also had 107 yards rushing on the ground and a touchdown of his own. And that he outgained Saquon. Oh, he almost outgained Saquon Barkley because Barkley had 110 yards rushing that game. But his play against the Jaguars that week earned him Player of the Week. I was proud of him against Indianapolis where he had those 2 passing touchdowns, but also 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. That clinched the 6th seed for the Giants. So that was the first time they scored 30 points in 50 games.
Yeah.
Holy cow. And obviously the playoff run, right? He beat the Vikings. He played extremely well. Had 4 touchdowns, right? No, 2.
2, yeah.
It was 2. I don't know where I got 4 from. Had 300 yards passing and 2 touchdowns to Daniel Bellinger and Richie James before they fell to the Eagles in the divisional round. Yeah, that was tough to
We didn't
watch.
talk about that game.
Yeah, I really don't. But at the end, they played well.
Yeah, they played well. It was like a surprise season. So, you can be upset that they lost a division rival the way they did. But it was like they should have never been there in the first place. And there's so much more hope in this organization now that let's see what we can build on.
100%. All right, so 2022 was great. The offensive line was the 3rd worst in the NFL once again, ranking 27th in pass blocking efficiency, allowing 188 pressures, according to Pro Football Focus. But Jones made it work. There was a point where in 6 straight games he had no interceptions, which, by the way, the Giants went 5-1 during that stretch. And most importantly, he was healthy the whole year, along with Saquon Barkley. They played all the games possible. Obviously, they didn't play the Eagles game because there was no point in Week 17.
Yeah,
or Week 18, I should say. And then 2023. Honestly, the worst year of my life. There was optimism.
A lot of optimism.
Yeah, it was. I mean, same offense, same defense. You had Paris Campbell, Darren Waller. You added Deontay Banks, John Michael Schmitz, Jalen Hyatt, Eric Gray as a backup running back. The Giants were like, okay, we have something. Until we didn't.
Yeah.
The offense ranked 30th with 15.6 points per game, scoring just 266 points total during the season, while allowing 23.9 points per game, 6th worst in the NFL. A lot of questions with play calling came to mind for the Giants this season. There were times, right, Brian, where it was like, okay, is Kafka calling the plays or is it Daboll? We saw that in Week 2 against Arizona. That was a big question mark. The offensive core consisted of Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, Daniel Bellinger, Darren Waller, Andrew Thomas, Justin Pugh, straight off the couch, John Michael Schmitz, Ben Bredesen, and Tyree Phillips. What we take away from 2023, Brian, because Jones, rough season for him.
Yeah, it's two things. One, teams learned Daniel Jones. I think the Eagles, especially in that divisional round, had the film on him and learned how to combat him. The biggest thing for me, though, is Brian Daboll said he wanted to make the offense more complicated. He wanted to add more things and make it more of a, pro style of offense instead of an offense where he's basically holding Daniel Jones' hand. And he thought he could do this because if you watch Joe Shane and Brian Daboll in their end of the year press conference in 2022, they talked about how much they loved Daniel Jones' work ethic. Jones was first guy in, last guy out, did everything they asked of him. So when you have all that, expectation of, okay, if you can do this, we're going to give you more, putting more on Daniel Jones's plate, doing more at the line, learning more play calls, learning more audibles, stuff like that. Jones was unfortunately unable to handle that, and that's what led to the struggles. Daniel Jones is a quarterback where if you make the offense too complicated, he's not going to succeed, especially when he was faced off Jason Garrett's offense, which is a very complicated offense. He's, has that, shell shock of it. He goes, I can't do this. And then he struggles. So they asked Jones to do something he just wasn't able to do.
And that's the thing because, things can't always be simple for you. You're in the NFL, you're a professional. You have to, you got to be able to handle complicated concepts and schemes. We can't just hold your hand. As much as it'd be nice to, we can't hold your hand throughout the whole thing. And statistically, Jones was just terrible in 2023. I mean, he had the worst game known against Dallas. Had just 104 yards passing in the pouring rain. I may add. In that
that picture of him came out with him and his hands in his head.
Yeah, that was bad. That game set the standard for the rest of the season. Mm-hmm. They did beat the Cardinals after having to come back from 31? No, they had to score 31 points. Yeah, 20-0.
It was 20-0 at halftime.
Jesus. So that was a miracle comeback by Jones, and he played well in that game. But other than that, after it was bad. They lost to the Niners, lost to the Seahawks, which was a very frustrating game to watch, by the way, that Seahawks game. So, he was just never the same after that Cardinals game, Jones was. No touchdowns. His QBR was under 35 in 2 straight games. He injured his neck against the Dolphins. He came back against the Raiders, though.
And tore his ACL a quarter and a half later.
And worth noting, he was not 100% pain-free from the neck injury. You could argue he didn't have Saquon Barkley, which is right. Saquon missed weeks 3 through 5 with an ankle injury as well. Saquon did return in week 6, but Jones was still out. So week 9 against the Raiders was the first time since week 2 that Jones and Barkley were together. But obviously Jones didn't last that long. You could argue the Seattle game kind of broke him.
Yes.
It did.
Without question, it broke him.
I
think it broke everybody's confidence. I think even the biggest Daniel Jones supporters realized that, okay, this guy is not the long-term option.
Especially when he stared down Darren Waller.
Yeah. The Raiders game, the Seattle game and the Raiders game were definitely the worst film that Daniel Jones has ever put out because that's where all my big issues came with him, like staring down receivers, not going through progressions. If his first guy wasn't there, and this has been a problem for Jones forever, but it became very apparent in those 2 games. If the first guy is not there, he's either trying to run the ball or he's going down. Or he's throwing the ball somewhere where it should not be thrown.
100%. Yeah. I mean, the neck injury, the ACL injury, that was devastating, and he was out for the year, obviously. So the Giants roll with Tyrod Taylor and Tommy DeVito the rest of the way. The offensive line, we'll see. Tommy Cutlets. Regardless who was at quarterback, the offensive line was the 3rd worst again in the NFL. Everyone except Andrew Thomas had a Pro Football Focus grade under 65. Evan Neal especially had a 42.1 Pro Football Focus grade, arguably, if not the worst in the NFL last season. Andrew Thomas did miss time with an injury of his own, so that hurt as well. So a very injury-riddled season for New York. Whether it's your leader on the offensive line or just your leader at quarterback. Sure, the Giants won 3 games with Tommy DeVito, but at the end of the day, that game really didn't do much for those games. Really didn't mean much to us because if we lost, we would have been in a higher draft position to possibly get a quarterback in 2024. I digress. I'm not complaining about Malik Neighbors, I promise. At the end of the day, though, Daniel Jones, 909 yards passing. Just nothing worth talking about, right? I mean, do you have anything else for 2023?
Oh, then it was, I think, the nail in his coffin.
Yeah.
He's now, because the rumors came out that when Shane originally was hired, he was trying to draft C.J. Stroud. That was going to be the guy the Giants wanted. They were going to go through the season with Daniel Jones, like they planned on doing, and he was going to be, when the Giants, they thought they were going to struggle, they were going to cut him loose because they didn't pick up the 5th-year option, and they were going to go draft their quarterback. That was always the plan from day one. Now Jones succeeded, and you kind of had to pay him because you're in no position to trade up to 2 for C.J. Stroud. You don't have the capital to do that. So you're kind of either, we have to sign him, but he wants this contract. So we have to give it to him because we can't come off a season where Daniel Jones showed so much improvement and still cut him loose because that's going to turn the fan base against us. So the Shane was in between a rock and a hard place with Jones. He kind of had to give him the contract.
Yeah. All right. So we went year by year for Jones. Overall, Jones was 22-36-1 as a starter. Has 62 touchdowns up to this point. To just 40 interceptions, I should say. He's thrown for over 12,000 yards, rushed for over 1,900 yards in his career thus far. And as you mentioned, Jones received a 4-year, $160 million extension after the 2022 season. And this, we are going to get to whether there's still hope for Daniel Jones, but we're going to guide you guys there. Because first off, let's discuss it. Why did the Giants give Jones an extension? Like Brian just said, they couldn't afford to really, we saw what he did in 2022, right? We saw what he did against the Colts. We saw what he did against the Vikings, and the offense played well. When he was out there, right? And you could argue the Giants give the extension. Was it because they made the playoffs in the first year under that new offense? Was it because he was that impressive, even though statistically doesn't say that from a passing standpoint? I think it's actually, if and I hope you can agree with me, Brian, on this. Was it because the free agent class wasn't that great anyways? Because you had Jimmy G, Jacoby Brissett, Teddy Bridgewater, Andy Dalton, Gardner Minshew, and Baker Mayfield, right? It wasn't that great of a class free agency-wise.
Yeah, no, you can definitely make that argument because, like I said before, there's no quarterback. The Giants can't trade up for a quarterback that they want. None of the quarterbacks in the free agent market are going to show you any sort of chance of competing again, which is going to be the expectation for a fan base that came out of nowhere. You upgrade the roster with Darren Waller and Paris Campbell, even though they don't seem like major upgrades now. Back then they were because Waller was seen as that, yes, he's a tight end, but the number one receiving option. They can run 2 tight end sets with Bellinger. That's not only going to help the passing game, more blocking for Saquon Barkley. Paris Campbell seems a deep threat. Daniel Jones in that season was very good at throwing the deep ball. So, okay, we got Hyatt and Paris Campbell. Both can be deep threats. Jones seemed to do decently with the deep ball. Maybe we're going to see more deep balls in his future. That's something you have to do. Those all are recipes for, okay, this team could compete next year. Let Daniel Jones go. First off, any team would have given Daniel Jones that big contract coming off that season. Maybe not like $140 million over, however much money it was, but a team was going to give him a big deal. They're going to give him a multi-year deal for big money because that's what the quarterback market is. Quarterback market is hype. It's overinflated than it should be. You always pay more for a quarterback than they're worth. But if you're trying to sell a Giants fan on, we want to compete next year, anyone but Daniel Jones, unless it was a rookie like C.J. Stroud, and even then, I don't think you get behind it. No one but Daniel Jones is going to convince Giant fans that yes, this is a serious push for a playoff, repeat.
Fair enough. And you couldn't draft a good quarterback in 2023 because of how late the pick was. This is in the late 20s. You mentioned how they would have to trade up, but they would have to trade up a lot to get a CJ Stroud, who went number 2 to the Houston Texans, as we all know. But it didn't. Even though the Giants were enamored by CJ Stroud, and that's why they didn't pick up Jones' fifth option, Jones played well enough to the point where I was like, okay, this guy could be the future if we just continue to add weapons and get him some help. So the Giants settled with getting Deonte Banks at 25th overall. Yes, they could have gotten a quarterback later in that draft. They could have gotten a Hendon Hooker or an Aiden O'Connell. They did not. Hooker didn't fall far enough for the Giants to get him.
Yeah.
So in the end, the Giants got a future center in 2023. They got a future wide receiver number 2 in Jalen Hyatt. They got a good running back in Eric Gray. Okay. So basically, we're still blaming Jones, right? Because for this whole, struggles with the Giants recently, because he played like crap in 2023. And the years before 2022, he wasn't that great either, to the point where you could argue even in 2022, when they did make the playoffs, he wasn't statistically great.
Mm-hmm.
But let's be honest, he doesn't deserve all the blame.
No.
There was a study done on the supporting cast for all 32 teams in the NFL for the past 5 years. The Giants ranked near the bottom in 3 of the 5 seasons. In the 2 seasons the Giants, or in the 2 seasons where Jones played well, 2019 and 2022, the Giants ranked 23rd and 21st in supporting cast, respectively. In the 3 seasons, in the 3 seasons the Giants struggled, especially Jones, by the way, the Giants finished near the bottom in supporting cast ranking, 31st in 2020, 30th in 2021, and 32nd worst in the NFL in 2023. By the way, the Niners were the best team from a supporting cast standpoint in 2023.
Not surprised.
No, not surprised at all. So yeah. Any thoughts on that before we really get to the question of the day?
No, that definitely helped. It definitely hurts Jones a lot, because I've always said that Daniel Jones, even after his struggles, his ceiling was a Kirk Cousins type quarterback, that game manager relying on your skill positions to do the work for you. Jones had no one in his skill positions to do the work for him. So you have no weapons. How is a game manager supposed to do well?
Okay. So here we are, Brian. We have gone for an hour and 18. We talked about year-by-year breakdowns. We talked about positives and negatives with every season. We talked about his college career. We talked about his journey to the Giants and all that stuff. All leading to this. Is there any hope for Daniel Jones? Even with all the talk, even with all the struggles, all the positives we went through, is there any hope for Giants fans when it comes to Daniel Jones?
I don't think so.
The floor is yours, my friend.
All right, so there's a few reasons why. Number one is I think Daniel Jones never had the backing of the fan base, and mentally he's just kind of been broken by the Giants. He's been in really bad situations. He's gotten hurt a lot here. All of that has been, basically this regime has given up on him. The fan base basically favors a meme quarterback over him and Tommy DeVito. Like, everything around this situation against Daniel Jones. But also, a lot of Daniel Jones' success has come from having a running back like Saquon Barkley in the backfield. It's come from being able to
We just lost Brian for just a bit. He'll be back with us once again. No worries. Not yet. I guess we can't hear him. I guess something happened. So we'll get back to Brian in just a bit. But he made a great point. Jones and Saquon, they need each other. They needed each other, I should say. Jones and Saquon did. When they they were fully healthy in 2022, and look what happened. They made the playoffs, and they built off each other, especially in the run game. Defenses had to deal with, was it going to be Saquon running the ball, or was it going to be Jones running the ball in those option plays? So Brian had made a great point with that, as he's back with us right now.
I've returned.
Yeah.
You hear me? We're good?
Yeah,
Okay,
I got
perfect.
you.
Alright, so-
I think you're making a point about.
Yeah, so with Saquon gone, like there's no ability to set up the play action pass like they used to. Like you used to have the game plan, like, okay, we can't let Saquon Barkley beat us. So if the Giants run play action, all of them are going to be on Saquon. Now with the running back by committee, there is no running back one. So defenses don't have to plan so heavily on stopping the run. So play actions become less effective. And then there's coming off an ACL injury. Daniel Jones, since high school, has been seen as this dual threat option. Since, we've seen it with Saquon Barkley himself. When you get that ACL injury and when you get older, you lose a step. Is Daniel Jones still going to have the mobility he had before the ACL injury? I don't think so. And I think if Jones loses that mobility, he's going to be stuck as a pocket passer and just does not fit the style of quarterback he's been his entire career. So he's basically going to have to relearn to play quarterback at 27 years old?
Yeah.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. I see what you're saying, and I want you. Please feel free to interrupt me as I go about my points, because I understand what you're saying. I really do. It's hard to come back from an ACL injury and be the same quarterback that you were and have that success like you did in 2022. But after further review from me, I think there is hope.
Okay.
I want to discuss the supporting cast real quick. We just talked about it. Okay. The offensive line has never been ranked above 30th since 2019. They've always been like the third or second or worst offensive line in the league. 2019, that's when they were like the 17th ranked offensive line. Gettleman, right? He's promised to fix the O-line. Failed. Joe Shane had to come in 2022 and work and have to, fix it some way, somehow. And he did to an extent because he made it work with Andrew Thomas, Ben Bredesen, John Feliciano, Mark Lewinsky, and Evan Neal. Like, that was great in 2022. Last year, injuries suck. Andrew Thomas, Justin Pugh off the couch, JMS, Ben Bredesen, Tyree Phillips coming from Philadelphia with the Evan Neal injury. And also, question, why were we okay with the whole rotating offensive lineman again? I don't understand why we did that. Anyways, Saquon, healthy in 2019, right? He played in 13 games. Jones was good when he had him on that field, in 2022. Well, no, I should say when both guys were healthy in 2022, they played extremely well with each other. They played all 16 games. Saquon rushed for 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, and Jones was successful as well running the football along with throwing the ball in 2022. The receiving core in 2020 and 2021. I mean, let's be honest, the Giants receiving core was never outstanding. Golden guys have come and gone. Golden Tate, Benny Fowler, Cody Latimer, CJ Board, Austin Mack, John Ross, Richie James, Marcus Johnson, guys like that. Jones never really had a wide receiver one, and it was Slayton, but he's not the right fit to be that guy. He was a fifth-round pick, for Pete's sakes. So, yeah, I just mentioned a bunch of crap, and that may be just a bunch of jibber-jabbish for you guys. So why should we have hope for 2024? If Jones is healthy, and I know that's not what you want to hear. If he's healthy. Brian didn't say if he was healthy. Well, it's hard to just say yes to have hope. But if he is healthy and he's ready to go, he's going to have the best offense he's ever had. And I said the same thing last year before you joined me, Brian, on this podcast.
Yeah.
But this will truly be the best offense he's ever worked with. You have a running back by committee, and that could work. That can work. Because we've seen Super Bowl champions recently. They don't have first-round running backs. They either have late-round picks or they mix in a bunch of guys at running back and make work. Example, the Chiefs. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Isaiah Pacheco, Jerick McKinnon. Not a committee per sorts, but they mix in running backs. That's what the Giants can do. You have Devin Singletary, who is a solid back. He's a sort of a dual threat guy. He's had 1,000 scrimmage yards in the past 3 seasons. They have Eric Gray. You have Tyron Tracy Jr. You have Gary Brightwell. And you have Dante Turbo Miller, who I'm a bit intrigued by at 24 years old. He might do something. We'll see.
His name is Turbo.
Yeah, that means he's fast, right? You can't be called Turbo and be slow. You have Malik Neighbors. He's the wide receiver number 1. You have Darius Slayton, who's hopefully comes back on a contract extension, a fair extension, I should say. And if not, you still have Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt. You still have Isaiah. You added Isaiah McKenzie. You added Allen Robinson. And you have Bryce Fort Wheaton, but I digress. They're all solid tight ends. You don't have Darren Waller, but it's fine. You have Daniel Bellinger. You have yourself a Theo Johnson. That's not bad. And on the offensive line, it is the best you're gonna ever have. You have Andrew Thomas. If you shift Evan Neal to guard, he'll be the left guard, and then you have John Michael Schmitz, and then you have John Runyon, and then you have Jermaine Elmanor. And they're gonna have a great offensive line coach led by Carmen Bracillo, who before he joined the Raiders had the 24th ranked offensive line. Once he came to the Raiders, they've ranked 10th in the past couple of years. Yeah. Bobby Johnson was complete dog shit. Carmen Bracillo is going to change that. Which comes to this conclusion. I'm not saying Jones will be the franchise quarterback for the next 5 years, 6 years. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But he deserves to be believed in for just one more year. He's going to have the weapons, Brian. He's going to have the best O-line, another year under the coaching staff. Even though many Giants fans don't believe in him, the Giants franchise does to an extent. It may not seem like it.
No, John Mara believes in him. Mara believes in him. He's very vocal about it.
Especially when Mara was like, yeah, we've done everything to screw him. Yeah. But, in terms of the coach, Brian Daboll and Joe Shane saying or believing in him, we've heard them say on multiple occasions when healthy, Jones is our starter. But this is it, Brian. I know you said there's no hope, but I'm going to say there is hope, but just for one more year. We've gone through all the weapons. We've gone through all of the supporting cast that he's going to have heading into 2024. He will have competition. Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito will push him. Every day in training camp, they will push him.
DeVito came on today and said, I'm going to get that starting job.
Yeah, he has a chip, and he has every right to do so. Because what did he do last year that Daniel Jones didn't? He won games. Granted, was it against bad teams? Sure, but he did beat the Packers.
You had to beat bad teams. That's how you win.
Exactly.
You beat the bad teams. You go 500 against the good teams. That's how you win in this league.
Exactly. And it's like if you can't win those easy games, and what kind of quarterback are you? So DeVito came out, played well. He will challenge Jones for that starting job. Same can be said for Drew Lock. He will challenge him as well. Jones will enter his second year of a 4-year contract. And he will be healthy, hopefully. Barring any setbacks, he will be healthy. Another year in the system under Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka. John Mara, like you said, they've done everything to screw this kid up. They fixed that now. It's up to you. Daniel Jones, you may not listen to this podcast. That's fine. But as Giants fans, we are rooting for you. Because if you end up giving us another 4 to 5 win season,
see yas.
You'll be out the door. But you have everything you need. You have a legit wide receiver number 1 in Malik Neighbors who will turn this franchise around more than since the days of Odell Beckham Jr. You have a competent offensive line now. Because the guys you added, John Runyon and Jermaine Elmanor, played better than any of the linemen you've had to deal with in years past. Evan Neal, you bank on his growth, and he will grow. He is going to be better in 2024, mark my words. And if you're worried about the defense, I would not. Because unlike the offense, they are loaded with Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, Deontay Banks, Bobby Okereke, Tyler Nubin, obviously, and so on and so forth. 2024 will be the make or break season for Daniel Jones. We'll have to see if he plays well enough to be the starter, not just for the whole season this upcoming year, but for years beyond. And that, my friends, is a special edition of the Third and 10 podcast. Episode 12 is in the books. We hope you enjoyed it. It was a long one, but it was much needed because many Giants fans need to know that although Jones has gone through a lot of crap, some people say there's hope, and there's reasons for that. Your reason for saying there's no hope is valid as well, because when you go down with an ACL injury, you just never know.
Yeah.
Any last points, my friend?
No, that's it. You're right. Let's see what Daniel Jones can do. Like I said, I don't think I have hope, but I've always said I'd rather be wrong and happy than right and miserable. And if Daniel Jones can make me look like an idiot this time next year, I'll be a happy guy. Either way, I'm right or I'm right and we're getting a new quarterback, or I'm wrong and the Giants winning football games.
Yeah.
Happy either way.
Dang right. Either way, the Giants will have a quarterback under center in 2024 and beyond. It's just a matter of who will be under center. Thank you so much, guys, for listening and watching. If you're up to this far, we'll see you guys on Thursday, and we'll go from there.